Welcome to the International Social Sessions, a series where we're digging into some of the hottest and most important topics in global social media with some of the speakers who'll be taking the stage at the International Social Summit in Barcelona in May. We're going to be finding out about them and what drives them in their social career, as well as diving into a specific social topic to get their insights and expertise, and hopefully leave you with some great takeaways, whether you're going to be attending the event or not. I'm Gemma Houghton. I'm the Director of Marketing at WebCertain, the agency behind the event. And today my guest is Anna Bertoldini, who is a social media and influencer brand manager at Nielsen IQ and a well-known speaker on the topic of employer branding and personal branding at many different events. Okay, so before we dig into your kind of specialist area and the topic we're going to talk about today, it'd be great to know a little bit more about you. And really what we'd like to know is why social? What is it about social media that really you enjoy working in so much?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I've been working for most of my career in employer branding, so that's really been a focus for me. And social was always a part of my employer branding work. My background is in marketing and communications, and social was always on my radar. Now with my new role, which I started, by the way, in January, it's going to be really central to what I'll do. So my new role is going to be around activating our employees and leaders and helping them be more active on social, providing content for thought leadership, and making sure that employees are humanizing our voice by really sharing what they know and furthering our message. The second part of my work is to establish those key influencer partnerships and brand partnerships to further our thought leadership as well in an unbiased way and adding authority to our message too. And finally, the social media brand management part is the third piece, which is essentially making sure that we amplify our full view story to our audiences globally and that our brand is consistent across all of our content, campaigns, and our branded channels. So social media went from being a part of my job to being central to my work. And the thing I love most about social media is the fact that it's so innovative and there's a lot of room for creativity and trying new things. I love experimenting. I love failing forward. And so social media, I think, is the perfect place to do that. There's so much room to try new things and test things out with your audience. And it's a really exciting place to be. So very excited to be here.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a bit about that, your path to getting here, because I think with social especially, it's people have very different ways that they come to it. It's less so maybe now, but over the last 10 years, it was never such a big role on its own right, maybe, and it's becoming more so that. But yeah, how did you navigate from more general marketing into the social focus?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I've always been interested in it and I've always worked in it. So like speaking of Nielsen IQ, for example, I work a lot with our social media team because we've activated different campaigns together. I was often part of the review process for different campaigns and content going out. And so it was always like on my radar that this was something I could get into. And it's always been one of the, like I said, most fun parts of my work to activate our different messages on social and also our employees on social. Mm-hmm. And leaders as well. So I think it kind of became a natural step after I found that content marketing was one of the favorite parts of my job. And also it came up a lot in my performance reviews. Whenever I spoke about what are the parts of my work that I love the most, I'm like, I just love the part about social and activating our story across social. And so I think afterwards, when the opportunity came up, I definitely couldn't say no to switch and do this pretty much full time.
So at the event in May, you're going to be speaking. Your topic is how to humanize your brand by leveraging corporate influencers. And I think this is something that many businesses are thinking more and more about now than ever, about how to really get across who they are and who their people are as well. So why are you so passionate about this, about storytelling in business? Why do you think it's so important?
Yeah, so to me, storytelling is the most powerful way of communicating your ideas. It fosters empathy and a real connection with your audience. People connect a lot more to stories than they do to facts and figures. People really crave stories and they can leave a powerful impact on the human mind. So I think it's just a really powerful way of communicating your message if you do it through a story. It's more captivating, more engaging, and definitely more effective. So that's why I think it's important for businesses to embrace storytelling as part of their communication strategy.
And obviously, a good way to do that is through using the people that you've got and kind of connecting with real people. So what are the kind of the biggest benefits you've seen when businesses really do this? How does it really work in practice?
Yeah, so there are a ton of benefits of activating your employees and leaders to be more active on social media. Well, first of all, it's good for them. This is meant to be a win-win situation because having your employees grow their brand is going to make them into a lot more. It's going to make them into real active ambassadors for your company, but also position themselves as industry leaders and thought leaders. So the main benefit is more exposure and more reach and engagement for your branded content. If they reshare your content to their networks, it's virtually free. So you don't have to spend as much on paid advertising when you have a big network of employees sharing your content. And also, I think it's important to note that empowered employees are also happier and more engaged in general. So if you empower them, train them and give them the right tools to speak up, you're not just going to have better content with a higher credibility and reach, but also happier and more engaged and productive employees as well.
I think, that is really important that, there's a benefit in it for both the individual and for the business. But I think that's sometimes the challenging part, is to convince people who maybe aren't very familiar with the concept and don't really see why they should get involved and why it is going to help them. So what advice do you have for that if you've got teams that aren't so familiar with it and need a bit of help persuading them to get involved?
No, of course. I think it's about showing real case studies and success stories from employee advocacy. Like, for example, maybe a salesperson publishing regular content and then getting a lead or a meeting from some of that content, or a leader who publishes content around some of your pieces or articles and seeing a higher engagement, or even aligning employee advocacy with marketing campaigns, something that we've done in the past that has worked really well. Because when a marketing campaign is aligned with employee advocacy and your employees are involved in the conversation, the content has a lot more reach and engagement, and showing that impact and what it can do for your brand is going to be key in influencing people and getting them on board.
And that applies whether it's the individuals or whether it's more senior leadership that you're trying to persuade also to buy into the program. It's proving that it works is always going to be the best approach today.
Yes. Leadership buy-in is absolutely essential here, because having leaders on board, and also, by the way, being advocates, adds a lot of credibility to your brand, because it puts a face to your company brand and it helps bring your brand to life. Because by activating people, you're really counting on the fact that people listen to people buy from people, essentially, no matter what type of marketing you're doing. You could be doing B2C or B2B, but it's always H to H, right? It's always human to human. So when you have a person putting a face to your brand message, it adds that extra layer of credibility and relatability sometimes to your message.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about getting started with this? If it's something that you really want to implement, but you really haven't done yet, it can be a bit overwhelming because there is a lot to think about and how, to kind of put everything in place. So what are the real kind of top tips for getting started that you would say are the crucial foundations for success?
Yeah, absolutely. So we touched upon one of those, which is to get that leadership buy-in. That's going to be essential, because if leaders are on board and they see the value of their advocacy and employee advocacy, it's going to make running and, well, not just running, but starting the program a lot easier. But if you're just starting from scratch, what I would really do is to focus on your most vocal employees first. So take the people who are naturally more active, and you see them on LinkedIn, you see them on X or Instagram, whatever channel you're targeting the most, let's say. But let's say LinkedIn for this example. And train those people on the power of personal branding and upskill them even more. So take people who are already very active already, or active enough to and are willing to get better and to start being even more active. Train them, upskill them, provide them brand guidelines on how to speak about your company, and also resources and assets to be able to share your brand consistently, and also help them be better content creators too. So learning and assets are going to be key. And then if you want to get a tool, it's a lot easier to track your social advocacy success with a tool. But if you don't have a tool, there are other ways you can track as well, such as seeing how content performed that was activated by employees versus content that wasn't pushed to employees. You can use maybe tracking UTMs at the beginning. There are many ways that you can track success if you're just starting out. But I think the key is first to have role models that are encouraging others and inspiring others to be active as well. And that's going to be like a great beginning if you have those people.
Yeah, so kind of start small and build it up once you get a bit of momentum and you've got people to help you spread the word.
Yes, absolutely.
And what about if you're in a much smaller company? So, this works when it's a very large company and you've got a lot of employees, because you're going to be able to find some within that are very keen to do it. But when it's a smaller business, is it still an approach that can work if you do have quite a small team?
Actually, I think it's probably even easier if you have a smaller team, because it's a lot more lean. You can create content fast. You don't need as many maybe like approvals or processes before going forward with something. So I think smaller teams do have an advantage when it comes to fostering employee advocacy. So I don't see that as being a barrier at all. Large organizations have a wider employee base to count on. And of course, you'll find a lot of different personalities in those teams. Smaller companies don't have this advantage of just like a lot of people or a huge workforce to count on. But smaller companies have the advantage of being more lean and agile, and usually quicker at responding to trends and coming up with ideas, and also in general putting out content quicker. So I do think that smaller companies have a leg up here, to be honest.
That's good to know, because sometimes it can feel like some things are only really going to work in big companies, and smaller businesses can feel they don't really apply to them, but actually it's not the case. And then what about if you are doing this internationally? Obviously, it's the International Social Summit, and we are always talking about how to kind of scale things up and roll things out on a more global level. So what are the biggest kind of challenges of doing that? And also, where are the opportunities that you can really tap into?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the challenges first. So to me, the challenge of rolling out a program internationally can be user adoption, right? Getting people to sign up at the beginning and convincing them that doing that extra work and going a bit the extra mile to be active on social is worth it, both for their brand, but also for their work. Because in some cases, if you think about recruiters and salespeople, for example, personal branding is a huge advantage for them in their work. It can really help them get more leads in general, right? So helping them see the benefit of personal branding is the first challenge. And then the second is, once they do sign up, to keep the momentum going. Because it's great to have people sign up, but if then you're losing engagement and people aren't really sharing as much, or they're just not as interested anymore because the initial excitement wore off, it's about keeping that momentum going. So that's where I would say share regular tips and best practices, keep them excited with new and fresh content, make it easy for them to share that content so it's fun and it's not like a huge hassle to do it. And about the fun part, I always recommend making it, I wouldn't say competitive, but making it fun in a way where people are incentivized to do it more, and it can gamify the experience by, for example, having a leaderboard. So those are great ways to get people to be more active and stay active. The opportunities of going international, of course, are representation. So you'll have a wider employee base to count on from different countries, different offices. And so that helps also with relatability. If more people speak up on the outside, customers and candidates will be able to see different voices. And I think that always helps with fostering that empathy and that connection with people, because if you can relate to the person speaking, you're more likely to listen and the message will resonate more. So having more people internationally speaking up is going to be really good for having diverse voices represented and that relatability factor of your content, their content. And having a great way to start rolling out a program internationally is about having, I would like to call them brand champions. So people in different countries that can help you activate the brand locally, who maybe find those active people or help you kind of run the program or also can act as role models in the different regions and then inspire others to do so as well. Different content works. Different regions have different content that works best, right? And every region knows what works best in their market. So having people share content in different ways, which they know works for their audience, is going to be key. So having role models regionally is going to help a lot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if you're trying to replicate the exact same approach in every country, it doesn't work. We know that from every aspect of marketing. You have to have that local edge. So it doesn't apply differently here than anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So finally on this, if you could just share one tip, your absolute top tip for anybody that is really looking to get started or grow their employee advocacy program, what would it be?
So my tip is to know that it's going to be hard at the beginning to build an advocacy program, but it's totally worth it afterwards. And my other top tip together with this one is that you should really make your employee advocacy program about the employees and not about your brand. If you position it as an investment in themselves and something that they can do to further their own career and network and personal image, that's going to help a lot in getting more people to sign up and stay engaged, because they'll see it as something that they're doing themselves, and then the brand awareness for your company will come afterwards. So really focusing on the people who are advocating for you and not so much about the content that's being advocated for. If you empower people to champion your brand as opposed to selling your brand directly, it's going to be absolutely key. So that's my top tip. Knowing it's hard, but that it's worth it. And second, that it's about the employees and not about you as a company.
That's great. Thank you. Lots of really useful and great tips there. So finally, of course, I just need to ask you before we go is why you are looking forward to speaking at the International Social Summit, and why anybody watching this now should be booking their ticket immediately for the event.
So I've seen the topics and lineup of speakers, and I think it's going to be an amazing event full of lessons and best practices and just like really amazing insights that you can take home with you after the event. So especially with my talk, I hope to really inspire others to activate their employees and to be more active on social media. So really making sure to humanize your brand and taking that home with you and knowing how to implement that in your own organization. So you'll learn a lot, and then you'll be able to apply a lot of the learnings for sure in your work. That's why I would sign up.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this today. And we really are looking forward to having you at the event in May.
Yay. I'm really excited for it. Thank you so much for the opportunity.